I was wrong about Wisconsin in more than a few ways in her first impressions review video that went up earlier last week. How did I miss this information? We'll get to that here in a minute, but let's get to correcting said bits of information here at the start. We'll actually start out with how's the ship doing after having played her quite a bit over the last almost full week at the point of recording this video. I still think the Wisconsin is an excellent dockyard ship, and I still think she is a really solid tier 10 battleship, and I still think you should definitely get her in the dockyard. Again, doing it the cheapest way possible, be it you buy the two-phase starter pack, be it you have the West Virginia 44 and you grind the whole event out, I would still highly recommend picking her up. She is still continuing to do quite well in the week since I released that original review video. I just seem cursed to be stuck in either a blowout match, one-sided match, or a match that ends in 5 minutes when I touch my Wisconsin. I don't know what's going on with that. It's patch week after patch week. Who knows? I don't know. That just seems to be my fate in the Wisconsin as of right now. But again, the ship is still doing quite well. I believe I have like 105, 110,000 damage average in her at this moment. So yeah, doing pretty solid for a tier 10 ship with myself playing her. So on to what I got wrong about the Wisconsin in that video. A lot of it boils down to small changes that I miss between her and her sisters. If you watch the review video, I go over the stats and port, and I pretty much say, yeah, it's a turbocharged Iowa with changes here, here, and here, but I missed some other changes too, like her heal. The Wisconsin heal will regenerate 642 hit points per second, while the Iowa heal only regenerates 625 points of HP per second with her heal. So you're taking the already improved Iowa heal and then giving it a little bit more here with the Wisconsin. The Wisconsin also has an improved rudder over the Iowa, and she has the Illinois Citadel, which means the Citadel is fully submerged underneath the water and isn't like right at the surface of the water like what you see with the Iowa. So it is, again, a tougher Iowa in all aspects. They're a tougher and improved Iowa. Now, one of the more egregious things that I left out, and probably one of the most important, not probably, it is one of the most important aspects when it comes to battleships, are the Wisconsin's guns and their parameters. In the review video, I mentioned that she does have 2.0 Sigma, but I failed to mention that she does in fact have battle cruiser dispersion. Why? Well, for a couple of reasons. First off, the parameters are so close. If you look at them in port, it is missable, in my opinion. For example, if you look at it in port, as far as dispersion goes, with my Iowa and my Wisconsin, who I have the exact same build on the ship when it comes to modules and, well, commander skills too, but it only really cares about modules and in this aspect. The Wisconsin's maximum dispersion is, again, at the 27.1 kilometer range that I have with my build, is 245 meters. The Iowa's maximum dispersion at that range is 294 meters. So, fairly close. But again, when we're talking at 27 kilometers, that's a pretty sizable difference, right? But if you look at the numbers on the screen, it's kind of easy to miss them. So I missed that. And then comes the big thing, probably the most noticeable change between the Wisconsin and the Iowa is the air drag of the shells. The air drag coefficient of the Iowa and Wisconsin are quite different. The Iowa has the normal American air drag coefficient. If you're wondering what an air drag coefficient is, it's basically how much the shells slow down as they fly through the air. That's kind of TLDR terms, but that's how it works. The Iowa has a rating of 0.352 when it comes to the air drag coefficient. The Wisconsin has a much more comfortable air drag rating of 0.290. So that's a pretty big difference. How big of a difference? Well, if you take an Iowa and a Wisconsin into a training room and let both their shells rip at the same range, you'll see that there's, when we're out to, I believe it's like 26.25 kilometers, there's about a second difference in flight time, which is a pretty sizable difference when it comes to battleship shells at range. Now, don't get me wrong, the Wisconsin's guns aren't the best at range. It's not what I'm saying, like they're amazing for sniping. They're not. The shells are still quite slow. Again, both sets of guns are having their shells exit the tubes at 762 meters a second, which is still quite slow. It's just that the Wisconsin shells don't slow down as much in flight as they do with the Iowa. If you want an idea of what some absolutely nutter set of shells are at range, that would be the Slava shells with their air drag coefficient of 0.2. Yeah, 0.2, that's it. And those shells are coming out the barrels at 870 meters a second. And yeah, that's a much more insane shell set right there. Now, I miss that because these numbers cannot be found anywhere in game at all. You cannot find air drag coefficient in the UI in port or in game at all, short of going into the game's coding, right? So that information is just full out missing from the game. And that's pretty important information too. We'll get more on that here in a second. And the other big difference between the Iowa and the Wisconsin is the croup, not exactly how you're supposed to say it, sure how you're supposed to say it. I think it's croup. The croup rating, which is the hardness of the shell, is lesser on the Wisconsin than it is on the Iowa. The Iowa has a croup rating of 2,520, while the Wisconsin has a croup rating of 2,380. So what that means is that the Wisconsin shell is a little bit softer than the Iowa shell in the game's engine, which means that it has slightly less penetration. So you're trading some penetration for more comfortable shell ballistics at range and battlecruiser dispersion. So yeah, that's the trade-off between the Wisconsin and the Iowa. Now, at the end of the day, a lot of these changes are incredibly minor. The Wisconsin shells basically are more comfortable at range, but have slightly less pen than the Iowa's guns. But again, you still get that the firing commands, the firing instructions, which will give you the faster follow-up shots when you get the reload booster going on them with those combat firing instructions. So again, I still think the Wisconsin is still very much a turbocharged Iowa, and I think the trade-offs are still very much worth it. And I just wanted to really give you the information that I missed in that video here. Now, on to the fact that none of this information is in game beyond the very, very, very basics that you can find in port. You cannot find the croup factor, you cannot find the air drag coefficient, you can't find, well, even really the overmatch, the ricochet angles, the arming thresholds, the fuse time. All of this very vital information that you need to know about your ship's guns are nowhere present in game. Now, sometimes, if you take a look at the tech tree, they will say like, hey, this line has short fuse AP, or this line has this going for it. That's still a very generic, you know, kind of heads up as to like the British BBs, right? Hey, they have a short fuse. Okay, how short is it? So you don't really know until you go looking for the information on a third-party website like Ship Tools, which is one that I usually reference. Again, I just didn't think to take a look at it because when you glance over the Wisconsin's parameters in port, it looks very close to an Iowa, so I missed it there. Again, that is on me, but the information still isn't in game. And I'm not saying that, you know, the information not being in game is an excuse for me missing it. No, I really should have looked at it a little bit better. But like, this information is, again, very vital to your ship and how you play your ship. And all this information should very much be available in game. Why isn't it wargaming? I don't know. I could take a couple of guesses. Maybe they don't want to clutter their UI. Maybe they don't want to overload the player with information. If you do go look at like War Thunder's hangar and you start clicking through the menus in that hangar, you get pretty overwhelmed with numbers fairly fast. So I can see maybe they're going for a more casual approach because, you know, the game is more casual than, let's say, War Thunder, right? But again, it has a lot of the same parameters going on in the game engine that War Thunder has going on in its game engine as well. It's just hidden from us. And I've talked about this in the past, but I think really going forward wargaming, with the fact of the matter that you're running out of ships to add to the game, you're having to add in variants of the same ships we have in game, like with the Wisconsin and the Iowa, you definitely need to have this information accessible in game somewhere. You could add another drop down menu in port, or maybe a toggle switch in port for more details. That would be pretty simple in my mind. You can have it default turned off like you do with most of the other parameters that give you more details, like the full HUD in combat. That's off by default. You have to go turn that on to get your shell flight time and all the other goodies showing up around your aiming reticle, right? So I just think really going forward, it would be a better quality of life thing for this information to be present in game. I don't know why it has been added in the past. Maybe it's just really not that big of a priority for wargaming, because they do know third-party sites like ShipTool does exist. So if the players really want to find that information, they can. But again, you know, this is information that the general player base should have access to in client, where they don't have to go dig up these third-party websites. And sometimes these websites, you know, the people running them lose interest, or the API changes, or the access for the API is limited, so they can't really get this information for a period of time until that is handled up on. We've seen that happen in the past. So, you know, again, something that I think wargaming should very much look at going forward. So guys, just want to give you guys an update there with the Wisconsin and go over some of the more major things I missed about her in her review. And again, just kind of rant for a second there about the detailed information not being readily available to the player base. But anyway, guys, let me know what you guys think about the Wisconsin. If you've picked her up, has she held up as good for you as she's held up for me? And again, let me know what you guys think about the detailed information not being available in game. Hope you guys enjoy. Have a wonderful Wednesday. Hope to catch you guys for the next one, for the next one too. I guess both of those work. Anyway, hope to see you guys in the next one.